Yes.
Response as well. Our system that we're working with the state and FEMA and Cal OES, so you know, it's $1,200 a year, less than $1 a child a year to have this system work point to point. I think that the fact that we're all working together is obvious, and that we want to create the best possible system that works for California. Regional networks are critical, and being able to do that, and then to create systems that can touch and relate to anybody. But this is also why Director Ghilarducci has tasked all of us to work together to understand what is that message, how do you deliver the message, is it done in a way that's effective, how many characters over a cell phone does it take to do a realistic message that people can respond to. There's been some very, very serious reports and money spent on that recently with some of the best social scientists in the world. This is not an easy solution. So again, we'll work together in every way we can to reach everybody, but the most important thing is that the base of this technology, the base of the system has got to work consistently. It's got to be faster, cheaper, and better than anything else in the world for California. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you for your presentations. And at this point, we'd like to invite Director Ghilarducci up to the podium. Director, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Chairman Gray, Chairman Hall, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be with you today. And first, let me thank all of the presenters today, and I guess make a clear statement that I feel no pressure pulling all this together for our great state. As you've heard from the presentations today, implementing an earthquake early warning system for California is more complicated than just switching it on and switching it off. There are many, many moving parts. There are many cascading partnerships and cascading stakeholders, all the way down to the public, but in the development of the system, but all the way down to how is the alert that comes out going to be received? What is it that people do when they get the alert? What is it that industry does when they get the alert? And I want to say that we've got obviously some of the best minds and researchers and academics and even private sector working on this solution. So when SB 135 was signed by the governor and was given to me to pull all this together, really one of the first things that I wanted to do is get an assessment of where we were at in California with all of the existing efforts. Much of this, these folks have been working on for over 20 years to develop this capability to where we are at today. Technology has evolved over that time. And for me, and for Governor Brown, of course, the concern was that whatever we developed needed to be coordinated and automated with a set of standards that could be implemented and maintained. It had to be reliable, as close to 100% reliability as possible, for the given reasons that have been stated that people would question its capability if there were too many false positives. And while maybe in Japan they have false positives, cultures are different between there and here. And here, since companies and corporations and industry would be counting on this alert, notwithstanding people wanted to be able to for life-saving aspects, if they had a false positive and industry was shut down as a result of that, they could be losing hundreds of millions of dollars. So reliability was very key. It had to be actionable in that there was something that had to happen in the role of the public, in the role of industry, so that we could mitigate the impact of the potential shaking that was going to be coming. While this has been talked a lot about being a life-saving program, which without question it is really equally a hazard mitigation program, pre-event, pre-disaster, pre-earthquake event that could help to buy down the risk that homeowners and industry faces, or the different sectors. You've heard from utilities, telecommunications, health and medical, transportation. We currently we have multiple modes of transportation. Public transportation is used in the state. We're building a high-speed rail system in the state. And these are places where these industries, these sectors were absolutely critical to be able to get the benefits of buying down the risk of potential, in the case of transportation, derailments, in the case of utilities, losing water or power, et cetera. And of course, the last thing is that it had to be sustainable. So when I was looking into this over the course of the history of the program and the development and all the great work that had been done by the CISN partners and work that really I've been educated on from the private sector, the challenge was, how do we pull all this together in a way that we could build this system that met these criterias, leveraging the innovation of private sector, leveraging what had been done currently in the public sector, but bringing those two together to make this system for California. I learned early on that it wasn't like we could just pick up the Japanese model or the Mexican model and lay it down over California. We have a series of very unique and specific challenges that we face in California, whether it's our population centers or our topography. But I did know that with all the threats that California faces, obviously earthquake was of highest impact to our state. And all of the great work that you have all done, and all of the great work that the governor has done to balance our economy, to get us moving forward again, the infrastructure that we have in place, really unlike any other disaster, within 20 seconds of shaking, could all be wiped out. And so it's very critical that as we move forward down this endeavor to implement this program, that it be done thoughtfully, it be done in a way that really could meet the 4 items that I mentioned as we roll it out. One of the key things to begin with, however, was that of how is it all organized? And governance, of course, is very critical for any program of this magnitude to meet that sustainability factor, to ensure that the standards are met, to have the ability to pull in public and private. We had some great testimony from a couple of private sector companies, one developing apps, one putting sensors in the ground. What does that mean in the overarching long term as we evolve and technology evolves? We don't really know what it's going to look like in 10 years because we're going to get more efficient, we're going to get better technology, but how do we pull all that in so that we do have that reliable system? And I want to thank Dr. Heaton because he really framed not only the threat very well, but he framed an example of the Weather Service. Weather Service is a good example in that it is a good public-private partnership. They're using the best in science and technology to provide weather data to the public and to industry. The thing about it is, though, in the case of the weather, is that if they're off, no harm, no foul to speak of. Maybe if you're going to have an outdoor wedding and it rains, that's a big deal to the bride. But recently there was a storm in New York where the forecasters were about 50 miles off of the target area. Trains were shut down, businesses were closed. You erred on the side of the mayor erred on the side of caution, but it cost millions of dollars to the economy. This particular capability cannot have that. We need to be as precise as possible at all times. So in this last year, what we've done with the passing of SB 135 is to pull together this working group to begin the process of framing up what it looks like to not only build an appropriate governance model, but also what are the standards that would need to be followed to incorporate public and private. What would the financing models look like to be able to support this over the long term? How does public and private industry work together to be able to not only help finance it, but also make it sustainable? And then what are the public education pieces that were necessary to ensure that that actionable part, what do people do when they get the message? How would that come to pass? As you can hear from the presentations today, it's not an easy, there's not a silver bullet, it's not an easy answer. It takes time to work this through. I'm not a scientist. I listen to all the input that I get from these technical subject matter experts, but at some point we have to take the greatest science and the development of the capability and move it from that concept of operations into public policy with regards to being able to roll it out as a program in the state. And that's really at the point that I believe that we are at now. We are at a point where we know what exists to the degree. We know there's more to come. Representation from the telecommunications industry today was fantastic. You know, moving the signal, for example, needs to be redundant in itself. You know, right now we looked at moving it on the fiber networks. That's the way that we've typically done it. But wireless also is a capability. How do we expand that? But how do we do that in the construct of making sure that it's secure and not it can't be hacked or changed when the signal goes out? As we move forward, and even in parts of the state that don't have good broadband capability, that are still maybe up on dial-up, we still have that challenge to be able to get the message equally in a timely fashion throughout the state. So while the working group has come together, and you know the challenge has been a little bit, how does the public and private work hand in glove together to be able to sufficiently and effectively develop this public-private partnership? You know, there are issues still that we are working out with that, issues of proprietary information versus non-proprietary information. But there's also concerns for liability in the actual warning. Currently, we're working closely with FEMA and the federal government on WEA, the Wireless Emergency Alerting Capability, as a standard for issuing emergency alerts throughout the country. And that is going to help. Those programs will help us to create the pathways in which we will move the signal out. Dr. Allen and Dr. Given are all correct, and Dr. Heaton, we do have pilot projects. We have put work into taking our existing system that is really used and designed for giving us strong ground motion and the kind of location and depth and et cetera for the earthquake, and re-engineering that to be able to sense that initial energy wave and do early warning. But to manage the expectation, it is important to note that we still have a ways to go. The 2-year time frame that was outlined in SB 135 for identifying the funding was one area that I was very vocal about with Senator Padilla when the legislation was put together, because I wanted that 2-year time frame to be a catalyst of making sure that we could take all these years of work and really focus it in getting the last mile, so to speak, in identifying the funding. In actuality, I am really at this point not as concerned with getting adequate funding. There is going to be just engagement of the private sector in being able to bring this together. There's fundings available. What concerns me more at this point and where we're focusing is really in that governance structure to ensure that what we build now is done correctly, and that as we move forward, it is done in a sustainable and coordinated way. overall, earthquake early warning from the standpoint of that robust system that Dr. Heaton talked about that needs to be laid out across the state in a reliable way still is a little bit of a ways off. But we will continue to work to build out on a regional capacity and build on these existing pilot projects. You heard about a couple today, both that are being done at Berkeley and at Caltech, but you also heard about one that's being done in the Imperial Valley, which is the one that's being done by Seismic Warnings. This gives us an opportunity to look at how these work. My view about building out our system was first to identify where the gaps existed. We know that for all the years that we've had this system, that we've built the capability, but the capability that we currently have falls short of what we need to get to for that reliable system. We know that we need roughly another 1,200 or so sensors in the ground to adequately network the system. We know that there are still gaps with regards to moving the message, as I mentioned earlier. Sometimes the pipeline that we are currently using to move the message could be problematic. And in an earthquake, it's possible that if you're not using wireless, that the fiber system could be impacted. We also know that overall, by bringing up the speed, the gaps that we have will bring us to a place where we can begin that process of reliably issuing the message. And the work that the working group has done has been phenomenally helpful to me to be able to at least make these policy decisions as we move forward in the coming year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have about earthquake early warning or how OES is sort of organizing that.
Thank you, Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Ghilarducci, thank you for all of your efforts and the work so far on this. And earthquake early warning has had a long history in California, maybe 30 years or so, and but we're still trying to get there. Aside from funding, what do you feel is missing that would be needed to bring the program to fruition?
Well, one of the first things I think is that we need to come to full agreement on what the standards are for operating within the California Shake Alert system. So we have this great working group, the California Integrated Seismic Network. We also have these private sector groups. And from a reliability and for a legal liability purpose, we can't have multiple systems. Same with even rolling out these apps. I think that innovation will move forward and companies will create apps, but it's going to be very important from the standpoint of the public and public's confidence that whatever gets developed, it meets some sort of a standard. I don't see that we will have a private system and a public system. There will always be this public backbone. How the various entities tie in will be based upon these collaborative standards that will need to be developed. The other thing is then really the build-out plan with regards to how the existing capabilities get built out. It's more, and the thing that struck me early on is that this has got so many cascading parts to it with so many different partnerships that it's far more complicated to say that $100 million will fix this problem. What this really needs to be is how do we take the different sectors that have capability and leverage those sectors, whether it's telecommunications or utilities or our private partners that are developing capability. How do we take those various sectors, leverage them to be able to fill the gaps existing currently in our system? That will accelerate the pace at which we build out additional sensor arrays. that will accelerate the pace at which we can be able to get that reliable message out. So I think everybody's got a little bit of a skin in the game, but it takes that collaborative coordination to be able to have us effectively achieve that piece. And then the other piece would be outside of the governance is then that to really develop what does it mean, because it has to be done concurrently. And that is this public education piece. What does the message mean? What does the alert mean to people? So you had mentioned earlier in the day that there was some confusion over press releases and other things that have gone out, and that was a concern because I think we need to manage the expectation of what earthquake early warning is and isn't, and what we currently can do, so that everybody can come to the table and participate effectively. This without question, I'm so confident, will be a tremendous system for the state, a legacy program that will not only reduce impacts but save lives. But it really will. That will only happen if we can do it right at the first step. At this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Would earthquake early warning notification be available to everyone, or would this be more of a commercial use?
That's a great question. This has to be available to everyone, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily all for free. And I think that that's an important distinction. I think that it really depends on the nature of the alert and what it means to you as an organization, a company, or an industry. Overarching, there has to be the alert that goes out to every Californian, every visitor, everybody that wants to come here to a degree. But there may be some more granular information, more granular data that is needed by industry. If I'm running a large corporation that I automate to be able to turn off my manufacturing line or alert my employees or do something to change my utilities, to ensure that there's not a false positive or to ensure that the needs of my organization are being met, there is a great opportunity to invest in private sector, seismic type warning capabilities on the ground in their area. So if you're a large campus, university, a hospital, utility, transportation, all of them to be able to get the granular information they need or desire, may be through maybe a subscription service or some other way to be able to help maintain the sustainability. But in generality, across the state, all people will be able to get the warning.
So my last final question, unless the member have another question, and if he does, then we'll entertain that question as well. Let's just say all the money is identified. All the money is identified. When can the system be up and running?
Well, I think that that's a sort of an open-ended question. I think that you have to consider these facts, that part of the need is taking the existing system and where we need to upgrading it to meet the current set of standards that are going to come forth. The second piece is filling in the gaps where there are no sensors or lack of sensors to be able to saturate the state effectively enough to be able to have that reliable system. The third piece is then the technology as far as moving that system, moving the alert in an effective way, and then what does the public do when they get the information. However, that all said, a lot of this is being worked on as we speak, but to manage everyone's expectation, I think we're still at least a couple years out from being able to say that we've got a completely reliable system that we can count on throughout California, that will require me to be in front of you and say that we are as reliable as I want to be with our earthquake early warning system.
Thank you. Mr. Member, you have a follow-up question?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask that question, but I appreciate the you putting that forward. I guess for me, the question would be, what do you need from the legislature? What type of support, direction at this moment in time are you looking for? Will it require for us to be at a point in a couple of years from now to be able to hit the switch on the system and make sure that all Californians have access to the warning system that will ultimately save their lives and or protect, our assets as it relates to our public infrastructure here in California?
That is a great question, and there's a couple of areas. First is that as we develop the concepts of the governance structure, looking at, one thing about California is that for as seismically active as we are, as big as we are, and as leaders in the earthquake industry as that we are, our earthquake programs, quite frankly, are very disparate. They're all over the map. And it wasn't always that way. We actually had earthquake programs that were more consolidated, where there was a single point of coordination and ability to provide better coordination through research and development, through financing, through public education, and through operations. We now have, this earthquake early warning as one, what would be a component of the CISN. We've got our earthquake and tsunami preparedness and response programs. We've got the California Geologic Survey. We've got the California Seismic Safety Commission doing research. We've got our universities. Everybody's a little bit, and you heard a little bit about this morning, a little bit competitive and a little bit discoordinated. So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we move forward to pull all of those disparate groups together into a more effective, coordinated, single focus where we could leverage the power of all of those different respective sectors into a more capable earthquake program, which would include not just another one-off program of earthquake early warning, but truly the earthquake programs for California, which will include both that research and development piece, the financing piece, and the operations piece consisting of public education, the warning, the CISN, our Shake Alert, and all of the things that go along with that. So that's one area I believe that the legislature. The second area is one of helping, you guys are the trusted agents in your communities. You're the ones that the public turns to. Helping to convey the message, helping in that public education piece, to be able to talk about what earthquake early warning is and isn't, and helping OES and the partner organizations get that message out will be absolutely critical in making this a successful operation. And then lastly is that as opportunities come up, if there are funding opportunities for different programs, particularly associated not even necessarily directly with the rollout of earthquake early warning, but with all the, there are many moving parts around that, and we can help you sort of connect the dots together, but that's an area that we could ask for assistance as well.
All right, Mr. Director, thank you for your attendance today, and thank all of our panelists this afternoon. I want to, if there are any other questions from the member, thank you. Also want to thank, in absence of the other members that were present, I want to thank them for their attendance as well. But I want to open it up for the audience. If there's anyone from the audience who would like to submit their comment or remarks. All right, seeing none. Again, want to thank all of this, and I want to also thank our staffs from both the Assembly GO and the Senate GO for their participation in helping to pull this hearing together. That being said, again, thank you all for your attendance today, and we will officially adjourn this hearing. Thank you.